Hi, hello, and welcome to the Cozy Collective podcast. I'll be your host, Jordan. I'm a Gemini sun, Libra moon and rising. I'm also a 6-2 manifester in human design. The Cozy Collective podcast are stories about my spiritual journey and lessons and tips that I've learned along the way. So sit back and enjoy. Episode 1, The Aquarius. This story begins during my Saturn return. Your Saturn return is from ages 27 to 30, and it's when the planet of discipline, Saturn, likes to shake things up in your life to make sure that you're on the right path. Saturn has been doing a lot of shaking up in my life because I was not on the right path. I was engaged to get married to a karmic lesson that I should have learned long ago. After a couple of bad decisions on both of our behalfs, I finally decided to end it. Plus, I was ready to see who else was out there. Daddy Saturn had plans for me. He was going to make sure I hit rock bottom. And I did. I usually don't judge people solely based off of their sun sign. But the 2 Libras that I have dated have helped me learn some very difficult lessons. This Libra was no different. Our relationship was me blindfolding myself and acting ignorant to all of the red flags and essentially chasing a ghost, which is ironic because that's how our relationship ended. He ghosted me. After this, Saturn was finally ready to throw me a bone. Laying in my bed in my parents' basement, scrolling dating apps, I finally came across the Aquarius. He was emotionally reserved, but he had motorcycles. We chatted and decided to meet up at a bar that he frequented. I put on a slim black outfit and tied a camo jacket around my waist, a waist that barely existed because I wasn't eating anything. It's the way that I deal with stress. I go into this date and I talk about myself the entire time. I tell stories of things that have happened to me, of all the people that I had met, and he just listened and sipped on his drinks. I think he was glad that I was oversharing because that meant he didn't have to share anything at all. We decided to call it a night, and I tried to make my move. Boom. Rejected. I couldn't believe it. When men are looking for women, they see the woman for who she is in that moment. And when women are looking for men, they see them for who they have potential to be. Clearly here, the roles were reversed, which is why I got denied. He saw potential, and he didn't want to ruin it with just a one-night stand. Instead of taking it personally and cutting him off, I decided that I would still hang out with him. I was finally moving out of my parents' basement into my own apartment, and those that were going to help me move fell through, and I decided to call him, remembering that he said it was his day off. He agreed to help me. He came over, we loaded up a U-Haul truck, filled up so much so that I made him hold a dining room chair out the window because it wouldn't fit in the back. He thought I was crazy, but he was along for the ride. Being in my own apartment was exciting. It was my very first time living alone, except I didn't spend one night in that apartment alone. Frankly, I was scared to be alone. I wasn't ready to face myself. I wasn't able to live a life that wasn't outside of me. I wasn't able to sit with just myself. So I would text him after work, and he'd come over, stay the night, and leave early in the morning. It was a pretty sleep-deprived time of his life. We loved hanging out and getting to know each other. And by getting to know each other, I mean the versions of us that we presented at that time. My version, an extroverted, down for anything, people-pleasing, no boundaried. His version, it was like a castle. Cold, thick walls that were impenetrable. And the communication, extremely meticulous. Lots of checks and balances to make sure what was given to the outside world was the perfect thing to say. Nothing escaped the castle that didn't need to be shared with the outside world. One day, we were spending time together, and I'd finally gotten a glimpse of who was inside that impenetrable wall. And I thought to myself, crap. Because I was starting to fall in love now that I had seen the true version. I shared my feelings with him and could see that he was relieved because he was falling head over heels for me. I gave him a spare key to my apartment and he moved in. Shortly after that, COVID hit. I always feel guilty talking about my experience during the lockdown. I know a lot of people that struggled financially, mentally, physically. But COVID was also a time where there was a huge shift in the collective. Some people heard this call and some people didn't. And I think that's why a lot of people had a hard time, because they weren't ready to change. They weren't ready to strip away everything that we had known. They weren't ready to let go of old systems and old ways in which we did things. That wasn't the case for me and this Aquarius. We had the best time. We were in a fresh relationship, just getting to know each other. We had essential jobs, reduced hours. All we did was hang out and get to know each other more and more. We had a lot of fun. I loved attempting to break into those castle walls and see who was truly on the inside. The more I got to know him, the more I learned why he had those walls up in the first place. He had grown up through decades of never being accepted for his true self and never believing that it was okay to be who he truly was. So he took that version of himself and hid it far away. The version inside of myself was a little ghost, something that barely existed, was just like a figment. It really gave me a perspective shift. And it also made me realize I don't know myself. He had this version of him that was safely tucked away inside all of these walls. My version, it barely existed. I lived for the world outside of me. I lived for the interactions, the relationships that I had with people. I never lived for what I wanted. This was my very first spiritual lesson. The lesson was, know thyself. Not knowing who I was felt like a blank slate, and COVID felt like the perfect time. Everybody was being stripped of what they knew. And this was the time to figure out genuinely who I was. I only wanted what society told me, or what my partners wanted, or what my parents wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. I did know one thing, and that was I wanted to live in a warm climate. I was ready to get out of the state that my family had spent 13 generations in. I had to get away from my homeland, if you will. I had to rip the roots out. I was ready. So I started thinking, where do I want to go? I had narrowed it down to 3 states. And I had asked the Aquarius if he would come with me. Of course, he was ready to drop everything as well. The world didn't know who he was either, because he wouldn't show them. We finally decided that we would tell our family and friends that we were uprooting our lives and moving to Texas. This concludes episode 1. Episode 2 will pick up with our lives in Texas. Another fun, enjoyable time in our lives. Going back to the biggest lesson that I had learned from COVID and from my Saturn return, really, was know thyself. A lot of us don't know who we are and what we want. We're living for relationships either outside of ourselves, or we have been never accepted for who we truly are. So we always make a version of ourselves to please whatever's on the outside. What's going to keep us alive? What's going to keep us in the tribe? I recommend making a list or even looking in the mirror and naming all the things that you love, all the things that you want. And then going back through that list and really asking yourself, are these things that I want, or are these things that my family wanted for me? For example, I wanted to go to college, but turns out I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to go to college because my parents wanted me to go to college. And I spent a lot of time lying to myself and trying to make my parents happy, but was never successful. You know what? That's a lie. I was successful. I got an associate's degree. I went to college. I was successful. And I did it for them. I didn't do it for me. But you can see how I'm still tricking myself into thinking that I wasn't successful because I didn't get a bachelor's degree. So that's what they think. So again, think about what you want. And hopefully you won't have to have another global shutdown to be in the place to figure that out. Thank you so much for joining me today for the Cozy Collective podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Cozy111Collective, or you can go to my website, Cozy111Collective.com. I'll see you guys next time.